art. But once in a while, you just get lucky. I mean, you can only focus on things you have control over, meaning you build a product, you sell to the customer, and once in a while, you get really lucky. I remember I was shocked one day that in my inbox, an email showed up. It was because we were competing with VMware, but we were also one of their partners because our product also supported VMware as a hypervisor. So as one of their good partners, I got this partner communication that says that the title of that piece of communication was why was this VMware product better than Cloud.com CloudStack? And that went out not just to me as a partner, but that went out to all of VMware's partners. So so once in a while you get really lucky because you have these I would have never been expected to be treated like a competitor by VMware. It just doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't. They're just too good to be true. But once in a while, once you have enough wings, they may just take you seriously, and they may even make that point known publicly. And when something like that happens, then your awareness just goes through the roof, right? I remember one of our, there were just tons of leads coming in because of that, and one of our existing partners or customers who are also a partner of VMware saw this note and said, "Oh, you guys must be doing something right." Because it's so like I said, there are things you can control, but then you just the luck would just carry the rest of the way. So I would finally I'd like to just tell you a bit about our exit, the selling of the company to Citrix, and tell you a little bit about Citrix. Citrix is a great story by itself. We're 20 years old, a little bit more than 20 years old, and I've never really seen any other company who's able to, I give you an example of, VMware as an example of these companies that just talk about strategic directions, disruptive opportunities they want to go, but they really can't execute. That creates opportunity for company startups like Cloud.com, and Citrix is basically in the same camp. If you think about it, I mean, this is a company who has a very successful established business in desktop virtualization, which is a great business, a great growing business, right? But what's different about Citrix is it is a company that was very aware of the fact of the danger of the situation they're in, about the innovator's dilemma that they constantly have to battle. So they consciously acquire disruptive businesses to add diverse and then nurture that business to add diverse revenue into their product mix. So as recently as I think about 10 years ago, maybe even less than that, Citrix still has just 100% of the revenue, close to $1 billion, coming from just one product. And throughout, I think that makes us, I'm not sure the exact number, but it's probably lower than 60% now. It's quite remarkable, because they acquired high growth businesses like GoToMeeting. Some of you probably know about GoToMeeting, and great businesses like Netscaler, right? But what you also have to keep in mind is these acquisitions, GoToMeeting and Netscaler acquisition, today they represent a very significant part of Citrix's business. But when they were acquired, they were very small. In fact, GoToMeeting product wasn't even built. Was probably just being built. It hasn't been launched. And Netscaler was a very small business, and it was back in 2005 when Citrix acquired it. So I'm very confident that that's why when Citrix expressed interest to buy Cloud.com, I really felt Citrix was the right home for a piece of technology like this, and we're able to grow into a much bigger business by being part of Citrix. So to conclude, I think hopefully I gave you some idea of how, the history of cloud.com and also about the, cloud computing industry itself. It's really all about disruption, and there are a lot of, you'll see, some of you who I know not all of you are probably in the high-tech business, probably the majority of you are, but you see all these big companies are all out there talking about cloud computing. But really, I mean, they have this term now called cloud washing, and it's just, it's not necessarily for real. And there's a, but it does serve a very important purpose. It does help educate the customer. It actually accelerates the market development. So these are good things, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of opportunities for small startups to be born and then to actually build a real business. And the opportunity is huge. If you everyone knows that companies like Google, Facebook, they just run computing more efficiently than traditional enterprise. Everyone knows that. But the challenge is how to really make it happen. Right? And you have all these startups that are basically taking a crack at it, and I think many of them will be successful, and there can be multi-billion-dollar IPO opportunities by itself, or even if they're not that successful, they could still be acquired by companies like Citrix. So that's what I wanted to cover.
Thanks, Shang, for an exciting story. We'll still have a lot of questions. So, I would also like to invite Naren Gupta. He mentioned Naren is here. Thanks to Naren for being here. He was a seed and angel investor, and as well as a long-time charter member. So I think you guys can, a lot of you are aspiring entrepreneurs. I'm sure there'll be a lot of them. You can ask him questions too. Maybe he might give you a check too. So first of all, talking about cloud, since we are at high nonprofit dollars, so I wanted to mention we do have a couple of cloud large corporate vendors, right? Hopefully they can be customers, but I don't know now anything about Citrix, Salesforce.com, SAP. There are large, the Salesforce.com, as you know, is the one. Salesforce.com, as you know, is the one which is one of the ones which has to the sign no software, meaning don't buy software and deploy and then try to manage it, etc. Just buy it from the cloud. They are our sponsor as well as SAP, but SAP is again, kind of mixed. So I won't say, but they're great sponsors for us. And then we have a lot of large companies like Emirates and other ones. Answer, yeah. Thank you, guys. So I don't do too much of sales thing. So with that, I wanted to, number one, before we get going with the questions, I'll just ask a couple of questions, then we'll open it to the audience. But before that, I wanted to just tell you one thing. He mentioned that he got a call from this large company. Actually, thanks to Naren. I was at a mid-sized large, I won't call it. It's probably around 800 to 900 million right now. I was there for 7-8 months leading the cloud strategy, so I knew Naren was on the board, so I said, okay, I got to go talk to Sheng. So I sent an email to Naren. I said, by the way, I'm here leading the cloud strategy and etc. And so can you introduce me to Sheng? And Naren, obviously, thanks to Naren, responds very quickly with his very quick. He says, Sheng, meet Naveen. And so I just showed up at Sheng's wonderful place. Everyone was sitting on his desk, and he had this small conference room. We did get a Diet Coke too. so that was my introduction to Sheng. This is, I think, last year, early last year in 2011. So thank you, Naren. And for those who don't know Naren himself is, just 1 minute, I have to do that, just to give my respect to all the, like I give my respect to Vish, being the chief cheerleader here. Same thing with Naren. Naren may not know, but he's been one of the very highly successful Indian entrepreneur. Not only him, actually, he's the only unique case where his wife is also original, successful Indian entrepreneur. Naren had started a company called Integrated System back in mid-80s. And 1980, okay. I came here in 89, so I was, and the only thing I remember is people used to say when you go to this gas station, all that embedded system control was done by, and I don't know if that's true, so that's all I knew. Okay, great. So, and then went public very successfully. Later on, it merged with another leader. Both of them were leaders, Wind River, and he was vice chairman there. And then obviously he's been a very successful venture capitalist. In fact, I was telling him before he came here that he's one of the pioneers of getting 2 cloud exits last year. Him, in fact, Gluster was another one, which was one of the, again, unique story. Those of you who came here, AB was here, Periyasamy, CTO co-founder in February. I did a My Story on him as well. So please make sure you connect with Naren, those who are looking for money from, I know we have a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs from Mexico also here. And then Naren invests cross country, so I think he might even open Nexus Mexico office pretty soon. Nexus Mexico SA, I guess, right? so that's about Naren. And like I said, his wife Vinita also was co-founder and CEO, founder and CEO of DigitalLink, another successful company in the early 90s in telecommunications and networking area. So again, you've been our role model. So thank you for being here. And at the same time, Sheng already mentioned about how you were able to help him. So I thought it'd be great to have Naren also on the board. So with that, let me get going. Just wanted to ask you one question, Sheng. So one of the thing was, if you look at a lot of, the question was, there's some quote. So from your talk in one of the, one of the topics, you had mentioned that you are seeing a tremendous growth in on-premise private cloud space. This is an article which came last year in May in cloud computing. So do you still feel right now that trend is still continuing? I mean, there are still a number of issues. As you know, I was looking into cloud a lot in the strategy side last few years. And so 3 years ago, everyone thought within 3 years, 80% of the enterprises will adopt. And everyone knows that most of the cloud services, they start with small businesses. It's easy. And that's how Salesforce started, but I think their mix might be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, large, small, and medium nowadays. But what is your thinking from the point you started, because you're focusing kind of both mixed, in the...
Yeah, so I think the question is about private cloud adoption. Private cloud are the kind of clouds that the enterprise set up behind the firewall. And as I explained earlier in my talk, that from very early on, Cloud.com went after the public cloud market, while a lot of our, and private cloud, but public cloud was really bigger early on, and while a lot of our competitors were solely focused on the private cloud. And but our view was private cloud will happen, but it will happen not because people just all of a sudden want to change, because cloud does feel a little bit different from traditional infrastructure. So in some cases, the applications have to change. The application in some cases have to be rewritten. So and people just won't do that just for the abstract benefit of using the cloud. What we always believed was the public cloud adoption would grow first, and that's that's just happening, because you look at companies like Amazon, Terramark, Rackspace, a lot of the cloud stack customers as well. They're growing very, very quickly, and once enterprise customers saw the benefit of using public clouds and adapt, and more importantly, adapt their applications to run on public cloud, then I think it becomes a lot easier to set up private cloud and actually put real workload on it. So it won't just be an experiment. It will be, because setting up a cloud is actually not that hard. The technology is not that hard. The problem is, if you build it, will people use it? So we continue to believe that public cloud will lead the charge, and that would cause a lot of workload to be adapted to work on the cloud, and that would then cause these enterprises to build a private cloud and hybrid cloud, and that's definitely happening. I mean, majority of we do have our early business was more public cloud focused, but recently the private cloud growth is definitely being much faster, and majority of these I think all of the private cloud customers, they've started with using public cloud like Amazon, and want to move that workload in-house.
Right, thank you. So one question now, in your first company, Teros, did you have venture investors as well?
Yeah, in the first company, we started the company in early 2000s, so that was not really a great time to start a company, just to say the least. But it was a great experience for me. Again, also I got to work with great Indian entrepreneurs. Some of them you probably know. This guy called Rosen Sharma. He really helped me a lot. In fact, we kept in touch, and even with Cloud.com, he was an advisor and a board member of Cloud.com as well, and really helped me a lot. And it was really part of my growth and education of understanding the business.
Okay. Well, the point I was leading to was, how was your experience? I know you did talk about how Naren helped you a lot, being right for the seed investment stage when a lot of VCs, no one would understand, right, what you're trying to do. So the question I was leading towards was, how was the experience if you interacted more with the VCs? Of course,
it was different. When Teros was started, fundraising was much easier. It was 1999, late 1999. It was practically trivial in retrospect, to raise funding. But that comes with other challenges once you start the company. And I think one of the things about Cloud.com is it was started in 2008, in the fall of 2008, right? And that's when very few people were investing out. When Naren invested in I think in April of 2009, so that was probably the absolute bottom of the market.
So one question for Naren, then we'll open it to the audience. Please feel free to ask both Sheng and Naren. So what made you invest? I mean, that's right. I mean, there was 2008 still. I remember a lot of people were taking the cash out of the banks in 2008 and putting it late 2007 and putting it in home.
Well, I think before I sort of answer that question, I have to say that the time we were involved with Sheng, it really was a great fun experience. And I'll tell you in a second why. So I think to answer your question, basically, we sort of invest in people. And frankly, I didn't really quite understand what Sheng was trying to do, to be honest. But I knew Sheng was a great guy. And it looked like it made some sense that, people will go to the cloud because EC2 was already beginning to be successful. And really, literally within 30 minutes of meeting Sheng, I said, we'll invest in the company. And I think one thing I would say about Sheng, my own experience is that we had a lot of discussions and arguments at board meetings about strategy and so on. And when Sheng did not agree with you, he would tell you that he doesn't agree. And to me, that is one of the biggest, most important thing for the CEO to tell the board no, if he or she really feels that way. And if you can't say no to the board, you shouldn't be the CEO. I would definitely say that. And I think that makes it possible to have a very open conversation, sort of, kind of push the edge, push the boundary of what is possible. Because if the CEO is going to just implement whatever you tell him, you're going to be very cautious about what you say. So I found that to be a really, really valuable thing to have a sort of an open conversation with Sheng about. But really, it was sort of Sheng's commitment to the thing and willingness to kind of go the extra distance. And I could tell one thing about Sheng is that he was very focused on customer service, making sure that customers' problem, if somebody pays us any money, that we are going to provide him value. And I think that's very, very important because one good customer can land you 10 other good customers, and one bad customer will certainly cause a lot of damage to you. So I think that was kind of the things that made us make the decision. And I was going to ask Sheng one question also is the company started out as VM Ops.
Right.
And maybe you want to talk about how we began Cloud.com?
Yeah, we just bought the domain name. That's really the whole story. But as I said, we were always under a great deal of challenge to get our name out there. It's like I said, cloud is such a hot space, So our value prop wasn't unique, and we weren't the first, and we weren't the best known. So so that's why we pay so much attention to customers, because at the end of the day, customers is the only thing that matters, and the product. And then for everything else, we just have to do what we can to raise our awareness. if buying a domain name help, then we do that. You know, if you know doing something else increase our awareness, we would do that as well. But I think you know if you really ask me, you know, one of the sort of recurring challenge I've had throughout this company in this very crowded space was marketing, and I don't think we ever really figured it out. And you know, luckily the market was early enough, so we were able to still aggressively reach out and touch a lot of the early moving customers. But you know, but even now as part of Citrix, where you know I still spend most of my time really just think about marketing, unbelievably. You know, so it's a very tough challenge.
Yeah, actually, I had talked to your marketing guy, Olander, I suppose, right? Yeah, I asked him, how much did he pay for cloud.com? He said he didn't pay much, so I don't know, he didn't tell me. But he's...
we bought the domain name to a third person.
Yeah.
Because, isn't that what happened? So, you know, because the company would, you know, so we ended up buying, I think from what I remember, ended up buying the domain name to a third person, because if somebody knows that a venture funded company wants to buy the name, the price might go up. But it was still,
Yeah, that's right. I think Peter really did a great job getting. He was our chief marketing officer. You know, like I said, a very tough job to do, and you know he had to be very resourceful and need a very small budget as well, and you know, had to do the best under the circumstances.
Great. Okay, we'll open it to the audience now. So we have the mic over here. Please raise your hands if you want to ask any questions.
Kind of missed the part of your exit. Why did you exit? Because cloud is still very hard. Personally, I felt you could have made billions of it if you really continue. Can you just share?
Yeah, no, I think the market is very early. So there's a difference, right? I mean, you look at companies. You know, you look back and you said there are companies like you know, like Microsoft. You know, why can't we be the next Microsoft? You know, but it was very different. You know, when Microsoft grew, they were able to grow under the radar for many years and really establish a runaway business model. Right? And then when they were really noticed, it was even too late for IBM to beat them. But I feel like today, the big companies are getting much smarter. You know, companies like Citrix are getting very smart. They realize, and they're not afraid of entering the market through acquisition by moving early, moving ahead of the true market adoption. And they were very upfront about it. So I think, so in that regard, you know, given all the risks that's involved, and given, you know, the potential of competing with Citrix, right? We already have VMware to compete with. Not that I, you know, worry about competing with Citrix when we were a standalone company, but you know, but again, we did realize that you know the market was just very early, and when you really put that in the, you know, when you're running a company, you can't get too carried away with you know, with some of the perceived early success. So I felt like, you know, what Citrix proposed was a fair deal, and I think was you know, was was fortunate enough to get the support from the board to make it happen.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I think I'm trying to use your own words, but you mentioned in the speech that you're worried at the smallest competitors. And I would like to understand what your worries were, and was imitation of technology was not a concern or is a concern? Because, you know, a lot of people do file patents or, you know, provisional patents, things like that. So what is your worry? I mean, I worry about patents, but what was your worry about since the market is already in existence?
Yeah, I think I probably worried less about patents. Patent is you know, it's a very interesting thing. I used to work. It depends on the industry. You know, I just, you know, knock on wood. I think so far the cloud computing industry hasn't been very litigious, but but I used to work in mobile, and it was very different. Luckily in our space, this is still more about fighting for customers, fighting for the hearts and minds of customers, and this is the interesting thing because again I preface everything I say by enterprise software in its early market. When you're in a very early market, big companies don't really have a lot of advantage because the early market adopters are very smart people. They see beyond the marketing message. They don't look at Gartner. I mean, in fact, Gartner doesn't even produce reports for a market that early. Right? But even if they did, Gartner themselves very honestly say their reports are mostly designed for late adopters, so that whole dynamics doesn't really apply, and it's a very that's where competing with small companies in the early market for us was very scary, and the problem is our VP of sales, Shannon Williams used to have this story that he used to tell to all his team, and it was really the reality of the situation, because he tell the story that he go to San Francisco, and then you can take one of these fishing boats to go out for a tour, and then you'll be able to see like sharks and whales, right? And once there was a practice that people would actually tie a surfboard to the boat. So then the shark would appear to be like a dolphin swimming. So then the shark would actually jump out of the water and try to attack the surfboat. So that was sort of a tourist attraction. But a few years later, that practice was banned, because what they found out was when the shark attacks, it exerts so much of its energy. So if it attacks just a few times without actually getting the food, it will die. So they were really causing a lot of sharks to die. So that's what we felt like when we were a startup, because there's only that much energy we had, and that much funding we had, and that much time we had. So if we attacked, meaning we competed in a deal, we put in all the effort, and in the end the deal doesn't come through. It was just, and if that's repeated a few times, it would have been very difficult for us to recover.
How about a question from our friend from TechDA? Anyone wants to ask a question?
Yeah. Can you make a comment about that? I think what Sheng said about competing with big companies versus small companies, that is absolutely right on. The way I think about it is that you have an elephant and you have a fly. It's easy to shoot the elephant, and it's very hard to shoot the fly, because they are just very maneuverable small companies. They change their plan, they change their message, they do all kind of stuff. So it's much easier to deal with an elephant than it is to deal with a fly that's bothering you. And that is something you really have to worry about. Plus, you may not quite know what the fly is doing. Elephants are very visible. I mean, they do these presentations on 40 feet by 80 feet, projection screens. But so I think that's absolutely something you have to worry about.
Well, thank you. Now we are in an activity. We're in a course about how to be better entrepreneurs. From your perspective, which advice would you give the students here, present here, to be better entrepreneurs from your experience?
I think this is a really good question, but I'm not sure I'm the most qualified person here to answer it. But from my own experience, right? I think what helped me at least is this constant. When I started as an engineer, I didn't really understand anything about business. I didn't understand the difference between cash flow or income, any of that stuff, right? But I think having a curiosity about, and very quickly I realized my job satisfaction actually has less to do very quickly, the job set has less to do with the coolness of the technology than the success of the business. And I think you got to realize that, and then you got to just keep asking yourself, what really makes a business successful? Why is our business less successful than it can be? So I think if you have that curiosity, then you got to be able, then you're able to put all the questions in the right context, and you're able to have even an intelligent discussion with the CEO of the company, regardless of how big that company is. And I think then you'll be on your way. But if you don't even have that curiosity, then it will be very difficult to really gain entrepreneurial experience.
Maybe I'll add a couple of more things to it. I think the most difficult thing for entrepreneurs in my mind is to manage their emotions. Because you get a customer, your customer count has now become twice of what it used to be before. And when you have small failures, you think the company is going to go out of business tomorrow. And I think that is one of the most important things you need is managing your emotions, because you make bad decisions when you if you can't manage your emotions. Second thing I would say is you need to have this sort of a ability to understand where things are, kind of what I would say, in addition to curiosity, being able to take a step back. If things are not working out, don't keep hitting your head against the wall. Take a step back, look around, maybe there's a way around the wall. And I think most people have a tough time taking a step back. They think it is a failure, but oftentimes that is what leads to success, is that when you hit a wall, you run into a stone, you run into a immovable object, you find a way around it. So I think just, a lot of it is just doing the right thing day in and day out. There is no magic to it. I think anybody can be a good entrepreneur, in my opinion. They just got to have the right attitude, and they got to really stay at it.
Any other questions?
You're talking about that shark analogy and working with the customers. How long were your sales cycle, and what things did you do to shorten the sales cycle?
I think, so about length of the sales cycle, and I think it's hard to say. It's a little bit beyond our control. So we have sales cycles probably as short as 3 months, as long as a year. And that's fairly typical of any enterprise software business. And there's probably not much you can do to shorten it. It's probably more important to have a good situation awareness. I remember one of our competitors, when we were in a hotly contested deal, what I heard was when the competitor lost, they didn't know that they were going to lose. So that was not, so at least when I tend to, we didn't win every deal, but I'd say, we at least didn't go in with some unrealistic expectations, because your resource and time is very precious, and you don't really want to throw really good effort after opportunities that are not very good. So you have to know where you focus your effort and land the deal.
Yeah, one question. You mentioned service providers were your customers. So how did you realize that those were your major customers? And second question is, who did you exactly reach out to in the service provider market? Or
yeah, so how do I realize they're our major customers? Is we were talking initially. You don't really know, but so you just talk to a few leads, whoever are will be willing to respond to your cold call emails, and it's very clear majority of the response was coming from service providers. Right? And another great thing about service providers was there are not a lot of them, and they're all name brands, or it's very easy to find out. Instead of hundreds of thousands of businesses in the U.S., there are probably only probably less than 100 internet service providers in the U.S. that are really worth even talking to. So it wasn't very difficult to, in our case, to find those guys.
Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics between the open source components of what you have, Cloud Stack, and how does that impact your business? Are you competing competition for yourself? Of course,
Thanks for bringing it up. So open source was a big part of our business, but I talked through the whole thing, without mentioning open source once, because to me, open source was really a means, to an end, to the end of building a business. And I mentioned we were really struggling about getting the awareness out there, and so open source is just a great way to generate awareness, and because you don't just have you marketing and promoting the product. With open source, you end up building a developer community who would champion this technology, even without your direct involvement. I mean, we closed a lot of deals in Japan because of that. A big part of it's still today a big part of our business is in Japan, and it's a little strange because we didn't have a big presence in Japan. It's not easy to sell to Japanese customers, but I think a lot of it is because of open source that we have a group of a very small group of very dedicated fans. We didn't even have to pay, right? So they're just out there talking about CloudStack, and they got some customers very excited.
Hi. You mentioned something about how being an entrepreneur is sometimes counterintuitive to the business in terms of listening to the customers. I'm curious in terms of how you manage that. Was there like a measuring stick that helped you to choose between sticking to your guns and listening to the customer?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard to really put your finger on it, but I just think and I've observed it. I've had the opportunity of talking to some budding entrepreneurs recently, and I always can tell how easy it is going to work with a person by or with some likelihood whether the person is going to be successful or not. By get a feel for how stubborn this person is. I really think stubbornness is a very bad attribute of of being an entrepreneur, or for that matter, being successful at anything. I think it really helps if you question. We all question ourselves a little bit more. So that's probably the only thing I.
Good point.
Anyone else?
Thanks for sharing your insights. Just one question there. You said that you really didn't have any differentiating factor vis-a-vis other companies which are in the same space. But still, you would have had a certain unique value proposition which got you those customers, especially in a B2B business, because obviously including price. So can you just share a few thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm saying no differentiating factors doesn't my point is, of course, we got to differentiate our product, we got to differentiate our service, differentiate the brand, everything. We did all we could, but my point is just my positioning itself. It's like Coke and Pepsi, it's not they're differentiated, but they're not really that different, right? So that's what I mean. So I don't of course to execute a successful business, you gotta always find ways to differentiate, like I was saying, I said we put the word EC2 in the subject line, right? And some of the other competitors just wasn't doing that, So it's just, every little bit helps, just help us differentiate.
I have a question to you. When you compete to a big company, for example, Development Cloud, how you get the confidence, or how you don't get afraid to compete with a big company in all the applications or web pages like Apple? How you get the confidence that your idea is going to work or to develop?
Yeah, I think the two different things. How do you get the confidence that your idea is going to work? That's number one. Number two is how do you compete with a big company? How do you get the confidence you can compete with a big company? So how do you get your confidence the idea is going to work? I think you have to talk to customers, and if you are building a website, then you have to just see some users, right? So it can't be based on your abstract thinking. You got to start with some insight, because if you can't start with a blank sheet of paper. You build something, and then when there's love from customers and response from users, then you build that belief. But I think competing with big companies, probably for me personally, it was probably from the experience of working in big companies. It was just very frustrating. Before it actually kind of makes me appreciate Citrix a little bit more, because I actually found Citrix being very good at overcoming some of these inherent limitations of big companies. Like we have a cloud product, but they managed to keep a separate sales team, separate marketing team. So we're essentially running like a small company, right? But when I used to work for another big company, we acquired a lot of companies. But the first thing we would do is we would disband the sales team or merge. And then very quickly, because a small company, small product initially were never able to deliver the revenue of the flagship cash cow. So we were never able to get the attention from the sales team. So they're just generally big companies make a lot of mistakes, trying to push innovative products.
Hi, Shank. Thanks for the great talk. It was really inspiring. About the entrepreneurship, right? I have a question. So when you had this idea of starting the business in cloud, right? I just wanted to understand what you had in your mind and what you're set to achieve. So you're thinking of set a target of having so many customers, or have a company for 2 years and sell it out to a big company, or what was going on in your mind when you had this idea and wanted to have your own company?
Yeah, so again, this may not apply to everyone, and it's probably pretty unique to me as an engineer, but for me it was really the love of the product. It was probably I wouldn't even say technology, because I don't think we necessarily had any truly unique technology, because it's open source. So any technology we have is out there for everyone to see. But I really loved the product we were trying to build. I think that's very important, right? When you were I didn't understand the market requirement, and I took guidance from VMware, the press release. But I really, in the end, the product made a lot of sense to me. And I've seen startups where where a very entrepreneurial person would start, and probably good at getting a group of people together and even get funding. But I think if the founders weren't intimately really directing the product, I think there's just a lot of risk in that venture.
I'll sort of give you a kind of a view from an investor. I think anybody who comes to me and says, I'm going to sell my company in 2 years, he'll be out the door pretty quickly. I would say he doesn't know what he's talking about, or she's talking about. I think you want to build a great product, you want to have market leadership, and good things happen. I mean, you really have to believe that good things happen when you do, build great products that people want to buy. Why would you, waste your time figuring out when you should sell or not sell the company? That's all sort of, And I think ultimately what Shank said, that's sort of, really the key is that you got to love what you are doing, because if you don't love what you are doing, you're not going to do a great job. It can't be a drag for you, to come to work every day. And I'll tell you something is, being an entrepreneur is, people think it's like freedom, you do whatever you feel like. But it's really the worst of the situation. Your employees are complaining about everything, your board is complaining about everything, your customers is complaining about everything. And you are really the one who can't complain to anything about what's going on. So don't think of things as freedom. It's really sort of liberating in the sense that you can do a lot of things, but you're really reporting to everybody now, with your employees, your board, your customers. So it's worse than you can ever imagine.
Exactly. I mean, there's lifestyle business, right? That's probably more about freedom, and there's startups, especially technology startups, balancing out all this stuff that Narayan was talking about is really the love of the product, I would say, for me.
I had a question. There's a lot of young entrepreneurs here. Can you lend some suggestion or advice on what kind of personal sacrifices, lifestyle changes they can expect if they are going to embark on starting a business, and sort of the challenges on a personal level that you see that you sort of went through from your end?
No, I mean, honestly, I didn't. This is a good question, and I have to say I probably didn't feel it as much as my family, as my wife, maybe my kid. I think they probably felt it a little bit more. Than maybe I was just having too much fun with the product to realize that. But that's so really a greatest time to be an entrepreneur is when you're young, right? And where you have less of family pressure. So that would be the advice I gave. And if you're a young person, you even feel you have to make your life sacrifice to do a startup, then you probably shouldn't be doing a startup.
Well, I think Sheng also had a kid the time he started the company, or just about that time. So maybe what does your kid think about? But it's all as long as you're having fun, it all sort of works out.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. This is that's so just start when you're young.
Any other question? We'll have 2 more questions.
From your perspective, what do you think is Cloud 2?
I actually haven't heard. The Cloud 2 sounds familiar, but I actually haven't really heard people talking about it. But I just think even with cloud. Oh, okay. But I think we're still at the very early stages. Yeah, of cloud computing. But maybe Mark is in a different position because what he thinks is cloud is SaaS, right? And SaaS is like a 15-year-old phenomenon. So maybe this is time to move to the next stage.
Okay, the last question, the lady there.
Hi. So you just mentioned that it was the love of the product that you started off with. Sometimes it's the love of the product that you start with is kind of a little different when you think of starting your own company. You got to have your own revenue model or something that you can make a business out of it. And that kind of differentiate, sometimes it often happens that you're late, you enter the market and by that time you have not really realized the exact revenue model that you want to create out of your product. So how do you go about it? Is it like you decide beforehand what will be the revenue model, or is it that you create something, you have a vision, you have a strong selling point, and then later on you think about how to create revenues out of it?
You have to. Good question. I had to know it beforehand because I think I said something before. Very early on I realized the job satisfaction had much less to do with the coolness of the technology than the commercial success of the product. So for me, just love of the product implicitly means this product is going to be successful. I remember I used to work at Sun, right? And that is a very anti-Microsoft-y kind of place back then, right? And I always say I love Windows because it just sells very well. You just can't help not using it. I was one of the first people at Sun using Windows and running Java on Windows, porting Java to Windows. So to me, this you can't really love. For me, you can't really love a product unless it's useful for people and people will pay money for it.
Very good question. One more question from the audience. Then I have 2 questions. Then we will end it.
If there is no other person, I would like to make another one.
Please.
Yeah, please. For example, Mrs. Sheng, who could be for you an entrepreneurial model, for example, now or in history,
Role model.
and why?
Oh, that's a very difficult question for me because I just haven't really thought about it like that. I think everyone's situation is different. It's probably somewhat unique to my background. It's when I grew up in a communist society, right, where I just when we were growing up, I felt like a lot of the I was always asked to write essays about what would be my role model for this and that. And I think I build up some type of just allergic reaction. I'm sorry. So I think I just kind of just.
And you have to write about the same person, I guess. Okay. So let me ask one more question. Last question. Anyone? Okay. So what if you had to? I know you're probably bound at Citrix for a few years. That's correct. When you have to stay there, right?
I like staying at Citrix.
Okay. I know it's on the YouTube. So anyway, the question is, what if you had to start a company today? So there are a number of aspiring entrepreneurs here. So what do you think they should start, let's say in cloud space or any space around that?
I talked about it. I think the space is still very early. We've learned a lot more than in the past 4 years, and there really are a lot of opportunities. I would not do the same thing that Cloud.com or some of our competitors try to do. I think that's sort of the wave of the past. And and I think companies like Citrix is really hit the stride to bring this type of technology to the mass market. But then what happens is if you think this basic layer of technology is built, then there are it enables even more businesses. A fundamental